Hey there, everyone. Daniel Lowrie with Antisyphon Training, and I'm back with another installment, another episode, as it were, in our Networking Fundamentals series. Today, we're going to talk about DNS. That's right, a lovely network service, one we enjoy and we love very, very, very much. I'm going to do my best to walk you through this fairly quickly because it is a very complex system. I don't want you to get too hung up on being a DNS master. You do not need a black belt in DNS right now. But what you would like to have is some basic understanding, maybe a yellow or a green belt or wherever one of the belts are in the middle, right? Just having a working knowledge of how DNS works and what it does for us is going to be pretty beneficial to you if you want to be in IT or cybersecurity. So let's start off with what is DNS? It's the domain name system. Don't try to say it fast because you're just going to go, and well, at least that's what I do. But it's the domain name system. Got it right? And what it does is it takes those IP addresses that we learned about before and it maps them to a domain name. Actually, it does it the other way around. Turn it that way. And here's why. Here's why it does that. Is because IP addresses are weird. And there's a lot of them. Last I checked, there's 4 some odd billion IPv4 addresses. Don't even get me started on IPv6. Tons. All the grains on a beach, right, of sand. All the grains of sand on the beach and beyond. It's insane how many, right? So let me ask you a question. Do you think you could memorize 10 of those? Sure, probably. What about 20? What about 200? What about 200,000? What about 4 billion? You can't do that, nor would anybody want you to. That would be insane. I mean, that'd be cool if you could do it. That's a cool trick right there. But normally, that's not how we work. Numbers, really difficult for our brains to comprehend and manage. What we're good at, though, is words. Words real good because I can associate a word with a thing like antisyphontraining.com. Those are words. And they have meaning, and they're very much easier for us to maintain instead of the 81.65.152.223. That's not our IP address, but you get the idea. I don't know what our IP address is. I don't want to know what our IP address is, at least not right now. There are reasons why I would need to know that, but right now I don't. I just want to know antisyphontraining.com, and I type it in my browser, and it goes, and antisyphontraining.com pops up in my browser. That's what I want to be able to do, and you can thank DNS for making that the reality. Because what if I'm one IP address wrong? I get something probably completely in left field. It's not even associated with what I was looking for. Well, okay, was it up one? Maybe it was down one. Maybe it was the middle octet, right? This is too difficult for us. That's why we like DNS, and that's what DNS does for us. So it resolves host names to IPs. Remember that. DNS resolves host names to IPs. DNS resolves domain names to IPs. That's fun. And it does this very quickly, so that's good. Sometimes it fails at that, which it does from time to time. And you go, why is this not working? It's DNS. DNS went crazy on you. But you do probably need to understand the method to its madness, at least on the surface, right? This is a high-level view. We're going to give you some of the information on what happens when I open my browser and type in antisyphontraining.com, what occurs. What happens is, well, it starts off with your computer, right? The browser itself. It's running on a PC, it's running on a laptop, running on your phone, or whatever the case is. It has to do a lookup. Well, it's going to start with itself because it's the closest thing to it. Maybe, just maybe, I've been to antisyphontraining.com within the recent past, and I made a record of where that stuff is. I actually made a copy of that, and I stuck it in a cache. That was smart, right? So that's part of the DNS system. So let's go in here. Here's my Windows 11 system, and if I run ipconfig/display DNS, making sure I spelled it correctly, there are all the IPs or host names to IPs that this system has cached, right? There's a record name, right? There's the human readable. Obviously, this is kind of down the road a little bit, But ultimately, let's look for something a little bit easier. So like login.microsoft.com, it's making a few little hops to one thing, to the next thing, and so on and so forth. But ultimately, we get to the resolved IP address, which is 20.190.135.3. Cool, right? That's on my local system. My local system has this record. It's not off into the wild blue yonder. It's right here. We can do the same thing if you're running in a Linux system. If you have a certain tool, that tool is called, I'm trying to remember, Resolve CTL. Resolve CTL. That's what you do. You'll need to sudo this. But if you sudo resolve CTL, I believe that's how it goes. And then it's show cache. There you go. Show dash cache. Like that's obviously because I'm sudoing, it's asking for a password. There we go. Resolve CTL. So I just probably misspelled. I think it's resolve CTL. There we go. Forgot my E there. But there you go. I'm looking at the cache of domains to IPs on this local system. You might not have that installed, by the way. You might have to install it. But that's a good tool for being able to do that work right here. Another thing it might look at is called the hosts file. On both Windows and Linux, there is a file called hosts. I'll show you where they are here in just a second. But basically what it gives you the ability to kind of be your own DNS service and go, hey, I'm going to put a host name and an IP address as a record in this hosts file. And if you don't find it in the resolver cache or the local DNS cache, look here in host file. If it's not there, then we'll start talking about going to actual DNS servers. But you can do your own business here. So if I nano, that's just a text editor, Etsy, so that's a directory in my Linux system. So /Etsy/hosts. And there it is. And you notice that I'm getting this as unwritable because it does require admin privs to be able to save. I can open it, but I can make changes. I just can't save it. But I could go in here and you can see I've already got one entry or two entries. I have a local host is mapped to this 127.0.0.1, right? The loopback address for testing your TCP IP and networking stack. I've also got it on 127.0.1.1 and it goes to B-Link. So if I ping B-Link, if I use those domain names or host names of localhost or B-Link, it will resolve to 127.0.1.1 or 127.0.0.1. And I can make these changes in here, right? If I wanted to, I could come and make my own. Oh yeah, I totally want 192.168.1.163 to be Antisyphon Training.com. And if I save this and I try to go to Antisyphontraining.com, it's going to think that that's the IP address for that system, right? Because that's how this works. Like I said, it's also in Windows, so I'm just going to close out of here. Let's go to Windows. Let's CLS this. And to do it here, it'll be type, if you just want to read the contents of your hosts file, which, funny enough, is in Etsy hosts just a little further down the chain. So you go to C:/Windows/system32/drivers/Etsy and its hosts. Bam. And there it is. And I can come in here if I have admin privs, which I believe you also need in Windows systems, and I can make an entry in here. And if I put one for antisyphontraining.com, it will think that is the IP address for that. So a couple of ways in which your computer might already think it knows the answer to this. And it might actually already have the answer to this. It might be right there. It could be one-stop shopping. Cool, we're done. But sometimes that's not the case. These records time out, the cache gets flushed, things go bye-bye, you restart the computer, it lives in ephemeral memory. It's not static. Hosts is. So if you make an entry there, be aware, it will continue to believe. It'll hit the I believe button all day long on that. But when it doesn't have those things, now we need to query the DNS system itself, the actual service that is available. Port 53, by the way, just in case you were wondering. That's why when you go to Amazon, like AWS has the service Route 53. Guess what it does? DNS, that's right. You are so smart. You're wicked smart. I love it. So, all right. So what happens? We don't have it in our cache. We don't have it in a host file. What's the first thing we do? Well, we have a couple of servers that we need to start querying. And we're going to start off with the recursive resolver. This is probably your ISP. It could be a DNS service, a public DNS service like Google or Cloudflare. I use Cloudflare. A lot of people, I've used Google in the past. You take your pick. It's up to you. Probably this stuff has been set by your ISP unless you are manually configuring these things. Just letting you know that. But if you wanted to change, you absolutely could. You go in and make some changes in your adapter settings and change what DNS service you use. Get crazy. It's a lot of fun. But it's going to start there. It's going to start with that recursive resolver server. Now, that server may actually already have a cache of its own with what you're looking for. If it does, so it's going to look in its own cache. If it finds it, it'll go, cool, here's your record. Enjoy, resolve the host name to IP, and everybody's happy. Off it goes. But if it doesn't, we need to get in the car. We need to go down the road a little farther, right? So if the recursive resolver does not have a record, well, it's going to refer you to the root name server. And when you type in an IP, or not an IP, when you type in a host name in your browser, like antisyphontraining.com, well, it's got that .com on the end. Maybe you have something with a .org on the end. Maybe you have something with a .net or a .mil or a .gov or a whatever, right? There's lots of them that are out there. I need to know how to get to that. And that's where your root name server comes in handy. It goes, hey, let me take a look at what you got here. Okay, you've got Antisyphon Training, and then you've got the .com. So you need a .com TLD, or top-level domain server. Let me see here. I don't know your record specifically, but I know you need a .com. I know where the .com servers live. Let me send you to them. You're going to be, it's a lot of pass the buck when it comes to DNS. DNS does a lot of like, let me send you to the next person. It's kind of trying to like, lessen the load for each one of the servers. So each one of these servers do a specific thing. And your root name server is basically, its job is to refer you to the correct TLD, or top level domain service. Okay. So when we do that, once it finally figures out, okay, you got the .com business, let me find you a .com server. There you go. Head on your way. You get back in the car, you drive down the road a little farther, and you find yourself that TLD server. That TLD server is going to go, hey there, how's it going? Welcome to .comsville. I hear you're looking for a record. What's the record you're looking for? I want antisyphontraining.com. Well, you've come to the right place. I don't actually have that record, but I know the person that does. Aren't you lucky? I told you came to the right place. So you're gonna refer me. You're gonna put me on hold and transfer me to another department. Yep, that's what's happening. So the TLD server goes, okay, who has the antisyphontraining.com? Who's the authoritative service for that? And that's where you're going next. The authoritative server. This is the person that will have the record. So it sends you down the road, right? Pack your bags, you get back in the car, you go down the road, you go to the authoritative server that is hosting, that has all the records for antisyphontraining.com. And it goes, you have come to me. I have the records you are looking for. And you're like, finally, I've been on quite a trip here. He goes, I know, you've come a long way. And now you are about to be rewarded. Looks in its database, finds antisyphontraining.com, pulls the record out, gives it back, and of course, it goes back to the client, eventually getting there. The client reads the record, uses the record to visit antisyphontraining.com. Whew, right? That's a lot. You're like, whoa, bro, that was a trip and a half. It was. The good news is that it takes me a lot longer to explain what's happening than it does for it to actually occur. And we can prove that, right? Let's see here. Let's go to here. I'm going to open a browser and let's prove it, right? If I go to Antisyphon training.com, make sure that I'm in the right place. There you go. So that wasn't too slow, was it? All that stuff could have been done in that time. And that's good to know, right? That while, yes, there's a lot of complexity that's happening if it has to do a full lookup, Fortunately for us, the real time in which it takes isn't very long. At least it shouldn't be. If it is, then there's something wrong and you need to figure out what's going on. That could be in our troubleshooting episode. Okay. Now that we know what DNS is, we know how DNS works. There's also one last thing I wanted to talk to you really quickly about, and that is the records themselves. There are multiple different kinds of records. Again, you don't have to be an expert on this. I just wanted to kind of familiarize you with some of these common records, what they are and what they do. So back into the PC we go. I'm going to utilize this website, which is digi.ninja/projects/zonetransferme.php. That's so you know how to get there. Now, down in here, this page was developed by this person for people like what I'm doing right now. Say, hey, when you're teaching or when you're talking to clients, sometimes you have to explain security problems related to DNS zone transfers, these files, these different records that we have. So they've registered this zonetransfer.me domain, which is easy to remember, which it is. So you can do exactly everything I'm doing here if you like to follow the bouncing ball. They have a couple of name servers. There's one of them. There's the second one. So 1 and 2, which is NSZTM1 and NSZTM2.digi.ninja. So we're going to use those DNS servers to do some of this fun stuff, which is like a zone transfer. We can get the entire zone record, which, by the way, if you find that someone is giving out their zone transfer, if you can do a zone transfer on Microsoft or something, you need to contact them and let them know, because that's a security issue, because it's going to tell me everything I want to know. What are all their subdomains? What's everything mapped to? What are the IP addresses? That's not something we like to do, right? That's a security no-no. So if you're able to do this on normal services like Antisyphontraining.com, that kind of stuff, that's not good and we need to fix it. So reach out. But for us, this is purposely letting us do this. So I'm just going to copy this command right here, which is a lovely tool called dig. Excuse me. And I'm going to drop it here in our terminal. So I'm going to do a Shift Control V to paste it. And let's kind of walk through this really quickly. Dig is the tool. I can't for the life of me get this. There we go. So dig is the tool. AXFR is basically the flags, the switches to let it know, the arguments to say, I want to do a full zone transfer. This at NSZTM1.digi.ninja is saying, use this name server. And then zone transfer file or zone transfer.me is the host name I wish to do a zone transfer for. Once I do that, I click enter and it gives me all the information about zone transfer.me. And inside of there are tons of different records. Let's start at the top here. SOA, that's the start of authority. Yes, I believe that's correct. And it's letting me know that zonetransfer.me is the start of authority for NSZTM1.digi.ninja, robin.digi.ninja, and then you have some numerical values, which are for timeouts of different types. Again, you don't have to become an expert. We've got a TXT file, which TXT files can be used to house just random information, and you can use them for whatever purposes. Maybe I want to verify you've actually reached the right place. I could put a string of text in here that would let the end user know you've come to the right spot. They get used for security features like SPF. This is all email stuff. So like SPF and DKIM and DMARC, they tend to use those there for that. We also have MX records. That's your mail exchange. Very cool stuff. So if I had an email address at zonetransfer.me, so if I was Daniel at zonetransfer.me and you sent me an email, these are the mail servers and their names that would handle that. alt1.aspmx.l.google.com. That's a long domain name, right? Or subdomains. What else do we have in here? Oh, here's the big dog, right? This is the most common record, the A record, because that is the host name to IP record that this whole journey began on. And you can see zonetransfer.me, we've got an A record, and there's the IP address. I can prove this. I can use another tool called NSLookup, right? Name server lookup. And I can give it zone transfer.me. And look, there's the IP address. Just like what we saw up here, right? Very cool stuff. There it is right there. Another great tool that you should be able to know about and use. Others in here, let's see here. We've looked at text. We've looked at NS, which is your name server file. So you can see there's the name servers, right? So the NS files are going to tell you what name servers are actually like authoritative over this zone transfer.me. We've got, what's some other good ones that are, we got a couple more A records. Oh, there's a quad A record. Very cool. Is there another, there's a better one? Yeah, there's a better one. There's one right here. You'll notice that the host name here is ipv6actnow.org.zonetransfer.me, and it has this AAAA. Those are A records for IPv6 addresses, like what we see here. So a quad A or a 4A record is going to be for IPv6 addresses, hostname to address. You also have the PTR records. These are reverse DNS. So if I wanted to go, if I had the IP address, but I didn't have the domain name, a PTR record would be what we need. So you could do reverse DNS. Very cool stuff. We looked at NS, we looked at TXT. CNAMEs, that's another good one. Do you got any CNAMEs in here? There's one right there. So like this one says staging.zonetransfer.me. Staging is a subdomain of zonetransfer.me. And then it's typically what we see with CNAME records. They're helping with these subdomains get to the right area. It's kind of like hey, let me send you to this person, then we'll send you to the next person, and so on and so forth. So you see like this testing.zonetransfer.me has a CNAME record for www.zonetransfer.me. www.zonetransfer.me has an A record, but it could possibly also have a CNAME record because www is a subdomain of zonetransfer.me. It gets real fun. Like I said, we're starting to get into the complexity of DNS. I don't want to take you down that road quite yet. This is a foundations course. This is a fundamentals. Right now, you should be good to go. You should be able to tell me what DNS is and what it does. It's a service that maps host names to IP addresses. And how does it do that? Well, it looks at my local cache, maybe in my Etsy host file. If it doesn't find it there, then it actually jumps out and starts querying the domain name system. It runs through a bunch of different servers, ultimately finding that authoritative service and getting that authoritative record and sending it back to the client. Those records include things like A records, quad A records, SPF, or not SPF, sorry about that, TXT records, that's what I was thinking of, CNAME records, SOA records, that stuff. How's that work? And now you got an idea of what those are doing. Whew. This was a long and windy road, kids, but I'm so glad that you took this journey with me. And hopefully now you are like, I kind of understand this DNS thing. It's not too bad. I can kind of work with it. Got a couple of tools like dig and NS lookup. Could be useful for you in your DNS learning journey. That said, thanks for watching. Hopefully you got some really good information out of this video. If you did, I'd be so kind to hit that like and subscribe button and follow Antisyphon Training on all our socials. We're very active on LinkedIn. We got Discord. We got all sorts of stuff that is for you out there, free resources. So jump in, check us out, see what we've got at antisyphontraining.com nonetheless, and see what's available for you and take advantage of that. That's it. I'm going to call it a day. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next episode. Until then, have a great day.